Welcome to SmithWeekly Discussions, an occasional program for our members of SmithWeekly Research. Please note this program is a private discussion and everything contained herein is for entertainment and educational purposes only. With that, we hope you're in a comfortable position, along with your favorite beverage, to enjoy the discussion. We remind our audience to examine our show notes attached to each of our shows to better understand how our program functions. Before we get into our discussion today, we want to say thanks for questions coming from our audience at SmithWeekly, including Sean M., Cindy W., Craig S., Jackie A., and Andy J. On the program today is a new guest of a returning company. Mr. Tony Makuch is with us. Tony is the Chief Executive Officer and Director at Discovery Silver. The company is advancing the large-scale Cordero silver zinc lead project in Chihuahua State, north central Mexico. Discovery Silver is listed on the Toronto Stock Exchange under the symbol DSV and also on the US OTC markets under the symbol DSVSF. Tony, it's a pleasure to speak to you for the first time. Welcome.
Yeah, well, thank you, Andrew. It's nice to get to talk to you, and nice to be able to get the opportunity to share some of my thought on Discovery and what we're at, and where we see this very exciting project going.
Thank you, Tony. It's a pleasure. It's great to connect with you. And, Tony, I suspect a good amount of our audience actually is familiar with your work. But given you are a new guest, typically we'd like to ask you, give us a little bit on your resume and your experience in the natural resource sector.
So originally, I come from a town, Timmins, Ontario. I come from a mining family. My father worked in the mines for in excess of almost 35 years. Same at my wife's side. My wife's father worked for about 42 years on underground mines. So definitely, we come from a mining history, mining family. In terms of myself, I mean, my education background, I mean, I took originally civil engineering and earth science or geology. I do have a mining engineering degree. I've worked at a number of mines. I've pretty much done almost every job that you can do in a mine, from a laborer, from working at various jobs in the underground mine and in the mill processing plant, to going into the engineering side. And I worked in engineering, long range planning, short range planning, in ground control, rock mechanic, and a lot of things. And from a mining point of view, then I got into supervision, and then into mine management, and then managed a few mines. And if you look at my most recent career, I worked with building mines out of Sudbury, Ontario, with FNX Mining. We started off with some exploration projects and advanced that to from exploration projects to production operations. I was chief operating officer, and then from there I transitioned over to a company. It was an exploration company looking for gold in the Timmins, in the Abitibi region of Timmins, Ontario. That was Lakeshore Gold in 2008, and we went from being an exploration company to producing in excess of 180,000 ounces a year, and sold to Tahoe Resources in 2016 for about $1.1 billion. And then from there, I went and started with Kirkland Lake Gold. And in Kirkland Lake, we had some significant success. Grew production from our operations in Kirkland Lake to three main mining centers between Kirkland Lake, Detour Lake, and then in Australia, producing in excess of 1.4 million ounces of gold a year, and eventually merged with Agnico Eagle, and with over $10 billion merger with Agnico Eagle to form and again, one of the champion Canadian gold companies. And since then, I've been got involved in a few boards, and as this opportunity came up with Discovery Silver, and to spend some time reviewing the project, looking at what's going on here, and I recognize that this is a really unique project. Probably it's one of the largest undeveloped silver deposits by reserves globally. It's in a really, really good location, really good people, and lots of value can be created. And I think from my perspective, and again, coming as a child coming into the mining industry, and I know a lot of times the connotation or the perception of mining as being all the negative perception you see out there on the mining industry. I seen it from all the positive. I see that we do a lot of actually great things. That we are actually the good guys, not the bad guys, right? And we create a lot of value. We've done a lot of positive things for different regions where I've worked, whether it's been Winnemucca, Nevada, down in Australia, and Sudbury, Timmins. And I see that we create new value and new prosperity for people from pretty much nothing, right? And I see this as being really, a lot of value can be added, and a lot of lot of generational, building a generational mine here in Cordero in Mexico, being something that can, be very good for that local economy, for the people, for this, and but for all stakeholders and for shareholders. And that's what really drives me in terms of what I like to do in terms of this industry.
Thank you, Tony. Yeah, lots of experience here and a lot of success on your side. And yeah, you and your team have been able to do a lot of things here. And the backbone of everything in modern life is mining. It's so critical to everything that we have in modern life and developing countries, economics. There's so many pieces, employment, so many things that this industry provides that I think people really forget about, or many people do in certain regions of the world that are maybe advanced economies tend to forget what got them there. And mining, without a doubt, is a very critical activity that we must have. Tony, so after all of your success here, obviously with Kirkland Lake being the most recent success, you could easily exit the sector. Two things: what keeps you around in this business, and why did Discovery Silver check the boxes for you to become CEO and bring along your team?
A good point. I mean, I guess the main thing is like, again, if I go, what really keeps me interested and why I like to work in this business is, again, you like to get involved. You get involved with people. We get involved with people and a variety of different levels of people. Building mines, I see, is a lot of fun. I mean, I've been involved. I've been lucky to been involved in building either expansion of mines or building of mines from numerous mines from scratch in different areas, and you see the benefit that brings to the communities and the people and all the other stakeholders. So it always something that drives you, and I guess it gets into your blood. You see, you hear about a deposit, you like to see how it's going to get mined and brought forward. In terms of Discovery, I mean, what I've seen with Discovery is you got about a 1.1, 1.2 billion ounce equivalent silver deposit. And that's only above 450, 500 meters from surface. And it's in terms of the property package and in terms of the area, it's just a small part of what potentially could be there. But it is a very large scale deposit. And then when you go through we did, there was a PEA done and we just completed a PFS. You see, geez, you're going to be building one of the largest silver mines globally. I mean, with 18 years of, we're only mining out less than 50% of the current resource. You're there for 18 years, producing an average of 36 million ounces silver equivalent, right? And as an operation, it would be the top three silver mines in all of Mexico, and definitely top within the top 10 globally, but also within the top two or three zinc mines in Mexico. And so it produces a lot. It would produce a lot of between silver, lead, and zinc. It's producing a lot of the materials that we need going forward. So and the operation, when you went through and you looked at where it's located, the environmental footprint, the metallurgy, the impact that the positive and negative positive and negative, I suppose, impacts that this operation would have. I mean, or let me just say that the positive impacts definitely outweigh any negative that might happen from having to develop this mine in terms of what it's going to produce. And it's a very clean operation, no acid generating potential, very efficient in terms of water use, very efficient in terms of land use, in terms of the region and what you can bring back from it, and in terms of the value. So I've seen a lot of good things, but the other part is a lot of good people, and good people within the company. And when you go down to that region in Mexico, you see a lot of good, hardworking people. Lots of talent, and then you sit there and say, "Geez, we can develop something here and create a legacy and create something and prosperity for others." And it's definitely a mine that, like I say, the current PFS demonstrated 18-year mine life, but it only accesses less than half of the current resource, and we haven't really done any further exploration. This is an operation that could probably be here for definitely for much longer, but by double or triple that length of time, producing in this region. So create a lot of prosperity and multi-generational operations for people and value. And that's what I really like about our industry. And I think those are the things that we create a lot of value, and new value into the industry, into the economy from nothing, right?
Tony, it's absolutely a monster, and it definitely can get a lot more life than what we're looking at in the current economic studies, as you know. Well, it's a monster. That's what it is. very interested in getting into some of the details on that. But first, before we move into Discovery specific here and talk about Cordero and some of the specifics, the silver market. This one has been a rough one from a investor perspective over the last for a number of years, really, with small booms and busts along the way in the short term. But really going back to 2011 or so, Tony, from the high. I'd like to get your view on the silver market. Obviously, there's things like industrial demand that we know has grown and replaced other demand that has fallen off. And then also, silver has a money element to it as well. But I'd like to hear from you, as you look at the landscape of supply, demand, the challenges bringing on new mines, and the issues just on the bottleneck and constraints on regulation and environmental concerns about bringing on and permitting these mines. Talk about the silver price, the market, and what we could expect to see going forward here.
Oh yeah, well, good point. I mean, and you talked to a lot of silver bulls, and we have I mean, we have some shareholders that are pretty much see silver and being silver bulls and seeing silver as a lot of legs to it, a lot of fundamentals why silver price should be increasing over the next few years. But you have to look if you do you talk about going back to 2010 or 2011. I mean, really mine production's been pretty flat. Somewhere around 800 million ounces a year, and there's really no new big new production coming on. You got a lot of the silver mines, and this is one thing when you talk to people, a lot of and investors in the industry. There's a lot of silver mines, but none of them, a lot of them are 3 to 5 to 6 million ounces of silver a year. A lot of small high grade silver deposits that are mined. They're marginal in terms of how much money they make, and there's all the M's and volatility that you have with these type of operations. And so there's been no real big, if you look globally, and this is the thing about, except for Cordero, there's no really any big new mine supply come online. So mine supply has been fairly flat for the last 10 years. Whereas, and then definitely on the demand side, as the transition, say on the photography, back in say back in 2000 and 2000 and early 2000s, photography probably represented somewhere in the order of say 200 million ounces of silver a year, or 25% of mine supply, right? Whereas today it probably represents somewhere around 10% or even less than that, 5% of mine supply. But what you've seen is you've seen the rising demand from solar and auto. You always have the investment demand, as you mentioned, on the silver price, and that's tied to the volatility of gold, etc. So when you look at no new production, you look at rising demand, and what's really happened over the last 10, 20 years, you've had rising demand from the industrial and solar sector, industrial sector with solar and auto, decreasing demand in other areas such as photography. We're almost at the point where you've taken where silver uses in photography was, say, what, 200 million ounces a year, down to, say, maybe it's at its point. We're at about 30 million ounces a year. You're almost at the point where that headwind of lower demand for silver from that component of the industry is pretty much at its low. It can drop a little bit lower, but there's not much demand to go. Whereas within the silver and the auto sector, say back in 2013, it represented 6% silver supply. In 2023, it's over 20% of silver supply. So it's tripled over the last 10 years. And there's nothing to say, especially with what you see, the emerging economy emerging, going more and more to renewable energy sources, as well as electrification on the auto industry. You could see the demand, doubling or tripling over the next 10 and 20 years. Similar to that, in terms of use of silver in solar panels and all that, all the thrifting, a lot of that stuff has happened and used up over the last few years. So you kind of look at it, you say that the next 10 years could be actually a big lot of maybe a tailwind into the silver market, because you're going to see, you still got flat supply, and you're going to see significant rising demand now, because you've offset the needs of silver, say in photography now, with solar, with industrial sector, and you can see that growing. Caveat here is, again, when you talk about 50% of the demand for silver is in the investment community. It's where what happens in the investment community and how that progresses, and how it's tied to the gold market, etc. But One thing that I think is important to look at when you do look at silver, and I go back again to say, early 2000s, silver was like $4, $4.50 an ounce. So silver sitting now, somewhere around $25 an ounce. As silver grows, you get higher and higher lows every time it does a pullback. So you see silver has been progressing in terms of price appreciation over the next few years. There's fundamentals in the market that'll demonstrate that demand should go up and supply is not really increasing significantly, right? And so I look in the long term as silver being a commodity that that people are going to need. The world's going to need more and more of this. I'm not necessarily, I talk to some people, and there's people that talk about $100 silver. And if we look at our project and we look at what we're building at Cordero, it's a very, very good project. It provides significant returns at $22 silver. And so any growth in commodity price over time, just from that, is going to have significant benefits to this project and to what we're building at Discovery Silver.
I guess the bonus here would be just that it works really well in current market conditions for zinc and silver and also lead. The fundamentals are such that it's definitely conducive to moving higher pricing on the silver market. I think that is certainly coming. To how high, where that goes, nobody really knows, but definitely I think the conditions are such that it does move higher. And then of course, silver.
Say, maybe I date myself, but I've been through so many cycles, and whether it's in gold and nickel or copper or silver, all the metals. There's always volatility. There's times when prices go high, and there's times when the prices pull back. But if you look at the space, everything is at higher and higher lows as we go forward. And you have to design your business around. To me, you have to design your business model for around where you think the lows are going to be, right? The new lows are, not to where you hope the highs go to. So if we define our business models around where the lows are, we got a good chance of being successful and providing proper returns and generating a project that'll last. At the same time, if the prices go up, then it's going to be, it's going to create a lot of wealth and a lot of value for people and shareholders, and put a lot back into with stakeholders and the communities and where we build our mines. And then the biggest thing with Cordero and this project is I mentioned earlier about we really only access about half or less than half of the current resource. Well, so you think about the optionality you have if we get prices down, if we get our costs down over time, and or you have higher metal prices into the future. There's a significant optionality on this project in terms of new value you're going to bring forward to the table.
Yeah, even modest pricing, 35 an ounce silver, the leverage on this is quite impressive, and then just the sheer scale that can be had. Plus, throw in a team that actually has the ability to go beyond developing economic studies and an office basis, if you will, but actually getting on the ground and actually having the ability to turn on an operation is a whole nother set of expertise that, as you and I both know, is lacking in the junior sector for sure. Why don't we talk more on Discovery here and get into a few other details, but why don't we kick off here with just giving us a snapshot, Tony, if you will, of the current capital structure, including the shares issued and outstanding, the cash on hand at the company post-financing here, and then also the ownership of the equity.
So we just completed a financing. So we sit with about 395 million shares currently outstanding. I think fully diluted, we're around 420 million shares. So at current share price gives about a $500 million Canadian market cap. In terms of share ownership, management insiders somewhere between 5 and 10%. It depends on the reason why that little bit of range is there, is where we have some of the insiders were some of the original founders, is whether we want to continue them as insiders as we go forward, but our management. But so 5-10% management insiders. Eric Sprott, who's our biggest shareholder, so just under 25%. We have one of our main institutional shareholders in Europe is Jupiter with just over 10%. We have other institutions with about 30% shares outstanding, and a retail side with about 35% following. In terms of balance sheet, we completed a recent financing, so it gives us somewhere, we sit with about $85 million currently. on a balance sheet. So we see ourselves being fully financed now to advance the Cordero project over the next 12 months, complete the feasibility study, and as part of completing the feasibility study, de-risk the project in terms of surface rights of land ownership in the region, securing water rights and securing power, etc. That well financed. We see to be able to bring that all to the table and present to the shareholders a feasibility study sometime towards the end of this year, early in 2024. And you mentioned a question in terms of people and junior companies, etc. I guess maybe I'll just make a comment. I know we talk about we're completing a feasibility study, but we're not completing a feasibility study as a study. Really, we're working now towards building a mine, and as part of building the mine, we're creating a feasibility report, a feasibility study that will outline that basically demonstrates the de-risking of the project, demonstrates how we expect to carry out the project, what the capital cost estimate is going to be to build, what the production is, how we're going to operate it, and so it's being designed not as a feasibility study that gets done and put in a book and gets put on the shelf, actually as an executable plan that we want to look towards going to the next phase with talk to shareholders and stakeholders in 2024 to finance this, to build this project.
Yeah, this is an exercise that's really required in terms of bankable, going to the banks, talking to institutions, talking to debt parties, etc. Obviously, they're going to probably want to see this, but it backstops, your guys' ability. And so I think it's a very good, a necessary process, if you will. Although, maybe sometimes you and I don't necessarily like to go through it, but nonetheless, it should probably get done.
Well,
But
it is going to spend. You are going to spend, invest money, and you're going to invest in an area. You do want to have a good plan, and it puts together a plan and outlines, puts us together and outlines what we're going to do and how we're going to carry it out, and how much money we're going to spend, and invest wisely into building a project that'll be very successful, right? So, in
right.
the end, planning is always extremely important to achieving success, right? I remember one thing when I was young, one thing I read, and there was a quote from Muhammad Ali. He said, nobody sees all the hard work and in the gym, etc. Everybody only sees me when I'm dancing under the lights, but nobody sees all the other stuff that goes on before I get there. He says, right? And
Yep.
it's sort of part of what we got to do. There's a lot of work we got to do before we get the chance to dance under the lights.
Yes, no, that's a good analogy. Absolutely. So you mentioned people as you joined the company here, which I suspect Eric Sprott had quite a influence on talking you into coming over here, Tony. But also you brought some people along with you as part of your team. Just briefly talk about some of the key people at the company and how they supplement your leadership.
In terms of the people and the company, I mean, I think there's some very unique skills. I mean, we have brought on Tony Esplin. Tony is the chief operating officer. Tony actually has a significant amount of experience working for Newmont, a lot of large scale open pit operations globally, both in Latin America as well as in Australia, and brings a lot of that to the table. Large projects. We have a pretty good team in terms of building from a capital cost estimate point of view, and building the owner's team that you can execute from the plan, whether it's some people with a lot of talent and background in mineral processing to managing capital programs. I think there's a pretty strong team, a really good finance team within the company. We strengthen that as we go forward with with people that can manage the project and manage the financials well, right? We have brought in some engineering staff. We're working. We got a very good, strong exploration and geology crew on site. So, and then down in Mexico, we've been really adding to our team in Mexico and bringing some new people on, and really, the focus, what I see and the success of that to develop this project. And the things that I've learned over the years is that we more and more we want to build our team and our capabilities in the region, and where the mine is down in Chihuahua and in Cordero and out of Parral. It is actually a very mining friendly area. It's an area that mining history since well in the 1800s. It was a silver region. It has a mining school within the town of Parral. So I think as we continue to grow now and can work towards feasibility and coming up with an executable plan to build this project, we want to really, create a centricity of our operations and all of our work to be down in Chihuahua to build this, right? So that's what we've been working on towards, really trying to add to the team of people in Mexico, whether engineers, geologists, administrative staff, technical, support staff in a number of different areas.
So the feasibility study is coming potentially early next year, maybe late this year. Talk just briefly about the existing PFS that came out earlier this year, and then with that, talk about the areas that you think could be improved in the feasibility study as part of covering off the economics and just the overall production profile of Cordero.
Yeah, so the updated, so the original PEA had a 16-year mine life, two-stage expansion, from 20,000 tons a day to 40,000 tons a day. Going into the PFS, we increased our productivity by 25% from 25,000 tons a day, then going to 50,000 tons a day in phase two. The uniqueness of Cordero is besides the fact that, I mentioned here we mine out 50% of the current resource, and that 50% of the current resources that we now is part of our reserve and mine plan is enclosed within this 1.1 billion ounce resource that's there. Even within the current mine plan, there's actually a higher grade portion, and so a phase one is to access that this higher grade portion for the first 4 or 5 years. That's our phase one of the project. We see that at a capital cost estimate somewhere around 450 million, and then we execute and we get that up to 25,000 tons a day, and then we continue to build a project while now we execute. We grow production to over 50,000 tons per day by year 5, and that's what really then drives this. With the average production over the life of the project now somewhere around 30 to 34 million ounces silver equivalent. It actually, as you progress in years 10 you're producing over 40 million ounces of silver equivalent from this deposit. You have one of the largest undeveloped silver deposits currently by reserves, over 265 million ounces of silver. You're going to produce 45 to 50% of the value of production is coming from silver, about 35% from zinc, and about the remainder from lead production from this operation. Mentioned a capital cost estimate 450 million. Current the NPV of that 5% using $22 silver is about almost just under $1.2 billion. But what's unique about this project, and this is where I've had a lot of people say to me, well, if people don't believe the capital cost estimate, it seems too low. And when you compare it to other similar projects going around the world, whether gold projects or such, or the capital cost, it does seem low. But actually, the capital cost here is actually probably closer to $900 million. But again, the uniqueness of Cordero is we can develop the project, do the phase one. That's the initial capital needed to get the project started, and then the project itself now can finance itself in phase two and build out to the ultimate production rate that we currently have in the PFS of about 50,000 tons per day. When you talk about where we see improvements coming forward, I mean, we think that there's still some upside. It's a very coarse grind, and the metallurgy are very good. And some of the things we're looking at doing and going into the feasibility studies, we think there's another 10 to 20% improvement in productivity we can bring forward on this. So go from 25,000 potentially up to 35,000 tons per day, and then from 50 potentially to 60 to 70,000 tons per day in terms of productivity. The productivity of the mine isn't the critical path; it's the productivity of the processing plant. Definitely, we gotta work on the other part of the infrastructure on site. We're working towards being more efficient with water use. We're looking at high density tailings. We think that there's significant room for improvements in either deposition of our tailings through high density and the benefits that has in terms of tailings stability, et cetera, and water management, to even potentially going to dry stack tailings. We're trying to work out what is the best alternative there. So we see some opportunity there. See opportunity in productivity again, opportunity in operating costs and operating efficiency through things like an environmental impact through tailings deposition strategy. We think that there's room to work on terms of the mine design itself. We want to bring into this now. We want to look at some opportunities for increasing bench heights or more automation and digitization of our operating plant in terms of how we're going to mine this ore body. I look at different truck selection, look at potential trolley assist or electrification and digitization in a lot of different areas that we think can bring a lot of improvements to the project. And then, when I mentioned to you about phase one to phase two, and if we increase productivity in phase one, we may even become even more capital efficient going from phase one to phase two, just because of the higher productivity. So, it's a project that I talk about the currently, or mentioned that the current NPV of the project was about just under 1.2 billion dollars. But actually, once we completed the phase two of this project, the actual NPV, or the value of the project, goes up to closer to $2 billion. So a lot of growth that's coming from this project, and I think there's a lot of new benefit. And in terms of timing of the feasibility study, we talk about end of 2023, early 2024. We're going to be pushing for end of 2023, mainly because as a junior company, I mean, this is our main value added that we have. I think we need to demonstrate to the market and get this work done. We're not just here to sit on and complete an engineering study and then go back and talk about what are the next steps, right? And then I think I've also, one thing I should have alluded to when I mentioned when we went from the PEA to the PFS, we increased productivity 25%. We went from a 16-year mine life to an 18-year mine life. And so what we never said was that we actually increased the size of the resource by almost 30% from what was done in the PEA going to the PFS. So there've been actually some significant exploration success on this project. And that's by the way, that's not at lower grades. That's at continued on that same average grade of the mine operation. And so going forward, and I think one of the other really unique things about this is it's a large resource, large deposit, definitely a giant of a deposit on near surface in Cordero. But we haven't really done much drilling below the deposits, outside the deposit, looking for extensions, looking for following up on all of the other targets in the project area. In terms of value drivers, as we continue to advance and de-risk from the pre-feas to the feasibility study, you look at our current market cap and where we're trading compared to value, you see there should be continued valuation improvement on the share price for Discovery shareholders. But then on top of that, as we make further improvements in terms of the valuation of the project through some improvements we see from the feasibility study, as well as tie in some exploration success, etc. And I think this is a very valuable company that's not necessarily been recognized in the market at this point in time.
Tony, fully agreed with that. The sensitivity to higher prices and all the numbers you were talking about under phase one, phase two, the expansion scenario, was all in lower $20 silver price as the primary put to the mine, aside from the zinc and the lead. But yeah, the leverage here is quite impressive, the exploration potential, and then also just another little adder. I think the company has been able to further de-risk with a team that has been able to build these types of projects in the past. So I think that's another key piece here. And it's probably the best silver choice in the market, short of little tiny juniors that haven't discovered something yet. Talk about for a moment the project finance package. I expect that will, discussion is probably already taking place, but it'll really kick off after the feasibility comes out. Talk about that and what you would expect to see, Tony, on the financing package in terms of bank debt, maybe bonds, equity financing, proportions of that, what vehicles you're going to use.
Sure. In terms of, you make the question of we already started on that. I think that's something that's real critical. I think as I mentioned, we're building a feasibility, we're completing a feasibility study, but we want it to be an executable feasibility study. So the financing part of it is something that we're working on as we speak, and we're including in it. Discussions with where various financial institutions are looking at a number of options of how we're going to finance this is key. What we're working on as we complete the feasibility study. I mean, there's a lot of alternatives. A combination of debt and equity that would probably be required in terms of to finance the project. Could be, ideally, you'd like to have a lot of it done with more of it done with debt, and don't try not to dilute your shareholders. But probably something debt probably somewhere between 40 and 60%, and equity probably somewhere offset that. So you might see something like 60% debt, 40% equity in terms of to finance this project. Although there's a lot of things that can be done moving forward, and part of it is how well we de-risk the project, what's going to happen with metal prices over time, et cetera, and how we get our permits and put all that in place. It kind of helps you there. I can tell you some of the things that we don't want to try to do. I mean, I mentioned about the expirations, the upside on this project, the future, the optionality in the future with higher metal prices and a large resource that's currently there, plus the exploration upside. One thing that we really have to be cautious of is whether we dilute base with any royalty from on a royalty side or from a streaming side. We have to be very cautious because we don't want to give all the future value away for nothing in today's market. So those are things we're going to try to stay away from as much as possible. Focus on working with some good financial institutions and debt, the large banks, and look at how we can do it from a project debt point of view and how we can do it to advance that way. When we look at going from phase 1 to phase 2, where we finance the project, at the matter of fact, the payback period on this project already is sitting around 5 years. So even in terms of the amount of debt that you'd put on the balance sheet and the duration of that, the payback's fairly quickly in terms of being able to eliminate the debt, or take, maybe you're going to have some high yield debt in the first phase, but within the 5 years after the project is built, you should be able to the company be very, very strong in terms of the balance sheet. And again, as long as silver prices stay where they are currently, or as they are in a pre-feasibility study. If you get higher silver prices, then it's only going to be even better in terms of how you finance this and how you pay off the project. One of the things, I talk to people about, the rules that I like to do in terms of as we advance the project and how we finance the project. I go back to, again, some fun things I remember talking to my father about, and things that I've used in my past experience, whether we're at past companies. And notice that even within Kirkland Lake Gold, we had no debt. Is the simple rules of debt is we're only going to borrow as much money as we need for what we need it for. Number one. Number two, we're only going to use the debt for what we raised it for. So we only want, if we're going to raise the debt to build a project, we're only going to spend the money on building the project, not in anything else. And then third rule of debt is, as soon as you get the chance to pay it back, pay it back. So
hopefully there's some various vehicles that can be used there, and maybe even with some of these metals coming out of here, the zinc lead side, maybe there's opportunity for offtake as well, instead of a typical stream royalty arrangement, but maybe offtake is an option there as well. So how
that's
this
a good
is,
point. There's
yeah,
some other companies in the region that have used offtake providers as a way to help finance, and you still get market conditions for your product, right? For the content. I mean, excuse me. The one thing about this Cordero project, by the way, that the zinc concentrate from this project is going to be about, is definitely a very quality product, and silver reports to the lead con. So again, in terms of having offtake agreements, this is a project that, I think we're going to be able to have a lot of alternatives and where we're going to do it from an offtake point of view.
Yeah, we'll come back to a few things on that topic in just a moment, but and I appreciate you taking the time here. Tony, as you well know, the jurisdictional risk is obviously quite fluid around the world today, and it can change often like the wind. But how comfortable are you in Mexico, and what do you think really de-risks the jurisdiction? And I would suggest maybe things like strong government relations as part of that work to make sure that everything from a jurisdictional standpoint is taken care of.
First, you hit it on. It's very important that from maintain government relations, maintain a really good standing and social acceptance in the communities of where we are and the people that work for us, plus our suppliers and in the region. So, as I mentioned earlier, we want to build a strong team, continue to build a strong team, and the center of our business and our decision making to be down in Mexico. For a number of reasons. We recognize, and we have built up a team in terms of government relations and people understanding sustainability, what we need to do in terms of understanding the permitting, understanding the political climate and what the needs are in the region. I know there's been a lot of discussion recently about some proposed changes in the mining laws in Mexico. I look at these and having built and operated mines in Canada, United States, and Australia, and been down in Peru. I mean, and a lot of this of what we're bringing into play is really just maybe catching up to the other jurisdictions that we work in. So it's not like it's bad stuff. It's just different in terms of what maybe people been used to down there. What I've learned is whether we build a mine in Peru or we build a mine in the United States or Ontario, etc., we've always used the rule that we use the standards, the highest set of standards of any jurisdiction that we work in, regardless of where we are. So from a permitting point of view, and in terms of some of the requirements coming down in Mexico, I don't see any major roadblocks to that. I think it's just us being learning what they are and being able to get clear definition and then address those issues. We're already trying to build that in terms of our water use, in terms of land use, and dealing with local communities and local people in the area. It's already front and center in terms of how we were looking at to advance the project. There's a lot of concern in Mexico just on the security risks, etc., and dealing with that type of activity in the region. When you go here and you look at where the project is and you look at the people, I mean, there's a lot of good, hardworking, honest people in these regions. I think what we do by bringing in these good, paying jobs, we have good standards in terms of how we work and what our practices are. I think we have a chance to be very, very successful here and really create an alternative for people that, you can come and work at Cordero and be very successful in terms of setting up your roots in this region. So there's always risks in every jurisdiction, but in understanding permitting, understanding government relations, understanding how you do business there. I think the biggest thing that I've learned over the years is that the local people in these regions, they live there, and the worst thing we do is we try to come into these regions and tell them, no, we know better. I think you just come in and you work with the people here, and the standards are high, the ethics are high, the work practice is exceptional, right? And quality of work and housekeeping and cleanliness and detail, the attention to detail that I see there is second to no area. This is not a third world tier 3 jurisdiction or at all. And so, I look at that as there's a lot of benefit here that we can continue to build in terms of this region, in terms of building this project.
Yeah, absolutely agreed with that. And definitely, I think you and I agree a lot on jurisdiction and what is considered a tier 1 jurisdiction. And certainly in a lot of ways, Mexico is considered tier 1, and you'd actually look at other places, advanced economies, if you will, or late stage economies, if you will. Tony is really moving out of tier 1 and moving into tier 2 potentially here, but that's a separate conversation I'm sure we could have another time.
Sorry, just before that, actually, some of the benefits of this project. When we talk about it, I mean, the project sits about 2.5 hour drive from the town of Chihuahua, city of Chihuahua, which is a city of over almost 1 million people. You're using a 4-lane highway to access to the project. It sits about 15, 20-minute drive north from the city of Parral, which is a city of over 120,000 people, mining. So you got access to people, you got mining schools, you got roads, you got power, you got water system. Everything's in the region. It's not like we're going into some isolated place in the middle of nowhere to build this project. It's actually in basically a built up area with access to. You don't even have to bring. You can have a local workforce, right? So.
Tony, just briefly, and I know you already covered some of it on the last discussion here, but talk about a little more detail about community work that the company is doing now. And if you can, maybe just foreshadow a bit for us on what new work the company is being considered when the company moves from obviously the cash consuming state that it's in now to a cash flowing state in the future.
Okay, well, I mean, fundamental is in terms of what we're doing in the community in the region. I mean, we're doing a lot of things to try to support. I mean, but support our employees as well as support the community and quality of life for people. We've been supporting local medical facilities. There's been a lot of work done during COVID, and I think there was a lot of work there. Plus, supporting whether it's so try to help in certain areas such as homelessness, in terms of helping areas, in terms of food security, but providing things for people, definitely medical coverage care, whether for underprivileged people, whether for elderly people. So we've been focused on a lot of these areas. And as we go forward, I mean, I think it's been the history, definitely what I've done and how we work. I mean, our main areas, we recognize that these mines, and when you talk about what we do, what we do in the region as we get the mines built and operate here again, we want to attract people. We want to be able to attract and retain people both in the region and new people to come to the region to live. What do you have to do to do that? Well, you have to create you have support the community, and support the communities again with some of the simple areas such as medical and healthcare, support in terms of recreation activities for people, support, when we talk about homelessness, and definitely one of a big global problem in mental health and areas of drug addiction, what we can do to support that and help that, and how that affects homelessness, and how that affects people. Focus on care, say for elderly people or disadvantaged people. When I talk about all these things, again, you're there to support to your employees and the people that work for us. And within our employee group, there could be a lot of people from all different facets of society, and by providing this type of support, not only do we attract and retain people, but we have a very motivated and a stable workforce, and people that'll see the benefit. And again, I mentioned earlier when we were talking, I have a child in the industry, but what you really like to do is you'd like to be a mining company that communities will call you up and say, hey, can you build a mine beside us? Because you know that by what we're going to do is bring prosperity, and improve the standard of living, and the quality of life for people in the region. And those are the things that we're going to continue to support. And those are the things I think that our industry needs to get more recognition for what we do.
Well said, Tony, and definitely the health of the local community is very important, the health of the society. And of course, we're a guest in the country, and, that's always important to remember as well.
Yeah, actually, the one thing I did forget to mention too, we are building. I mentioned building a multi-generational mine, right? We already got, say, 18-year mine life, but I think this thing will be here for much longer than that. So the other area is in terms of education and training and development of people, right? And
Yeah.
people from, not only from people from laborers and truck drivers and mechanics and tradespeople, accountants, etc., but the next set of managers, and the next set of people that can even run this company or other companies, and continue to grow the industry. So definitely investment in youth education and training and development of people is something that's going to be very important for us as well.
Yes, absolutely. Very, very critical and much needed in the industry, as you and I discussed prior. Last thing on the project, Tony, you know everything there is to know about the technical aspects of this project, the jurisdictional aspects, the community aspects, the financing side. What's the single biggest challenge that you see?
The single biggest challenge? The one thing is, I mean, perception of the project, and I mean that's part of what we're working towards in terms of improving that perception. We're a company with a $400 million Canadian market cap. That we're going to complete a feasibility study and demonstrate to investment community that we need to raise, between 450 and 500 million US dollars to build a project. So that's the biggest challenge we face in terms of getting that, and headwinds against that. Whether it's the perception of the jurisdictional risk. There's permitting risks, etc. But I think that's the main area that we have to recognize, that we got this financial requirement, and how we're dealing with that is, that's where I mentioned we're completing a feasibility study, that's an executable feasibility study that'll include, address all the areas from a social license point of view, whether it's water management, whether it's people management, whether it's environment standards, etc. Address areas of financial risk, whether demonstrate how we want to carry out the project, very the thoroughness in terms of the estimates on the work we're going to do. So demonstrate a whole management system around around executing on the project and understanding what the scope is here, and that we're not going to have scope creep or capital cost creep on building the project, and also demonstrate the operating plan, and that the investors or people can look and say this is definitely a project that you can take a risk on and you're going to see return. Again, the company's currently trading somewhere around 0.25, 0.3 of the value of this project. There's got to be a lot of upside as we go over the next few years and get this project built. That's going to be very important to do, so we can demonstrate, make this a project that if people have to take risk in terms of investing in, let's say this is a project that you tie your sales to. And then I think what we do over time is we got to continue to demonstrate them. I think there's a lot of other exploration, other success and new value creation that can come from this project. As we secure land and water, etc., and de-risk the project and come up with continued exploration success and really grow this the resource, potential resource, or even come up with new discoveries. I think these are all things that are going to help in terms of moving the project forward and get that. But yeah, the biggest risk is we have to get this thing financed.
Tony, it is clear that you want to build Discovery into a mining business that is operating and sustainable. If this is achieved over the next few years, what next? Will it go and build other projects? Will it seek M&A? What will be the plan? What will be the exit? What do you have to say on this piece of it? Because I think that's going to be important as to what your goals are with this company, because this project is one heck of a cornerstone and a platform.
Exactly. I mean, this project here could become a cornerstone asset for building the next great silver company, right? It would be a cornerstone app. It would transform any of the a lot of the peers in the silver space, a lot of current producers in the silver space, and it could definitely be a project that can help in terms of building the next great company. And I think that's the thing you want to do. And part of what we have here is we have this unique project, and then as we go forward, we want to make sure that we don't dilute the value of this project by trying to do other things, right? I see this as being the opportunity to create a new silver companies in the silver space. So.
Well, Tony, let's leave it there for now. Appreciate you taking the time. For potential investors who are listening in, Discovery Silver has a market capitalization of about 400 million Canadian dollars. Why should the company be considered within the institutional, family office, and retail investors' portfolio?
Why again? You have one of the largest undeveloped silver deposits by reserves globally. It's in the right jurisdiction. It's got a very good team of people. And when you look at current valuation and in terms of where the project can, where the value of the company can be from an investment point of view, lots of opportunity for this to double or triple. So it's a good entry point into a project with a good management team and access to capital, etc., to get this thing built. You can take a view of what you think about the silver market, and there's significant optionality on this project. Not only is a good project under current metal prices, but there's significant optionality in the future as if you believe in the silver market, which we do, and that there's growth in the silver space and zinc and lead in terms of what value the price of these commodities are going to grow over time. And then we have the exploration upside on this. So I think from an investment point of view, you're entering into a company or into a project at an early stage. It's one of these unique opportunities, and there's lots of opportunity for growth and value as we advance the project and get that value that we see here, get the market and the street to understand what that value is.
Thank you for that. And Tony, the best way for interested parties to reach out to the company.
I think you can reach out to Forbes Gemmell, forbes.gemmell@discoverysilver.com. I'm happy to respond to any emails or any inquiries, etc. So.
Tony, we appreciate you taking the time. Keep up the work, and we'll be back in touch soon. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Andrew. Take care.